I'm here with Nora Greenwald, formerly known as Molly Holly in WWE. Nora, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good. Now, you've been involved with the wrestling business for a long time. You started in 1997, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, wow, is that like over 20 years? Crazy. Yeah, wow, yeah, it's been a long time.
That's the same year I started the website, so it's...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so how'd you get involved? I mean, what made you want to get into wrestling?
Well, really somebody just invited me. I wasn't really a wrestling fan. He just said, hey, we have a pro wrestling school. There's just one girl at the school. She doesn't have anyone to train with. You look athletic. Why don't you come check it out? And I really just went out of curiosity. I'm always open to meeting new people and new adventures. And so when I went to the pro wrestling school to check it out, I was like, oh, I think I could probably pull this off. And so I really was just doing it like as a hobby, no aspirations of ever like being on television or doing it for a living or anything. But yeah, so really it just all started with a simple invitation from someone.
And so obviously you must have taken to it pretty quickly because you were in WCW not too long after that.
Yeah, I think with my gymnastics background, just like the moves came pretty easy for me. It took me years to get like with the stage presence and like all the other aspects of it. But as far as just like learning a technical maneuver, I picked that up pretty quick. So yeah, the opportunities for me to perform, and plus there weren't a ton of girl wrestlers at the time that I started, and so there was just more, as it was becoming more popular, it just worked out that it's like, oh, you guys need girl wrestlers, and I happen to know a few moves, so okay, count me in. So
nice. So, how were you approached by WCW? What was did they give you an idea or tell you that you were going to be paired with Randy Savage?
No, actually, it was Randy Savage's idea to bring me on TV, and he let Eric Bischoff know that I was going to be part of his entourage on television the same day that I debuted. So the way that it happened is that Macho Man had hired me to teach his girlfriend, Stephanie, how to do some wrestling moves, and Stephanie and I kind of hit it off and became friends, and Stephanie said to Macho Man, like, gosh, this girl Nora is like knows all these moves and she's not even on TV or anything. Do you think that maybe she could be a part of our group, like on television? And Randy said, yeah, that sounds great. And so Randy had Stephanie's seamstress make me a sparkly outfit, and Stephanie taught me how to rub on fake tan and dye my hair platinum blonde. And he brought me backstage at WCW, and he's like, told Eric Bischoff, hey, I'm bringing this girl on TV with me too tonight. So that was it. It was like, I wasn't under contract then or anything. It's just that Randy just said, okay, you're part of my deal. And then eventually, that I did get a contract, but it was just kind of cool that, that Randy just had the power, I guess, to do what he wanted on TV, and he wanted me to be part of his group, and so that was really flattering and awesome.
Yeah, I became a wrestling fan in the 80s, and Macho Man Randy Savage, still my all-time favorite wrestler. You never meet someone and think like, oh wow, that guy reminds me of Randy Savage. His character was so unique.
It's true, yep.
How was it working with him backstage?
He's super intense. I mean, I owe so much to him because he believed in me enough to, really give me my shot at, being a full-time career wrestler. So I owe a lot to him. But he's the kind of guy that doesn't need a lot of sleep, and he's very driven and very goal-oriented and has really high expectations. And so his off-screen persona is still very intense, which really just helped me kind of push myself to the limits and do things that maybe I didn't think I could before. But yeah, he was always very kind to me, but also very driven.
Yeah. When he left WCW, he kind of fell off. He had the role in the Spider-Man movie, but other than that, you didn't really see him. Did you keep in touch with him after he left?
Not really. Like, we didn't have a ton in common, like outside of the ring. Like that was when we were together. That was the main focus, was the performance on the show. But outside of work, like we had different hobbies and different interests, and we're at different ages, and So I would say I ran into him a couple times around Tampa after he left wrestling, but no, we didn't really like hang out or anything like that.
Yeah. Now, when you were in WCW, and a women's division was starting to get going, they never had a women's division before that, right? Like, I don't think Medusa did she ever wrestle in WCW, or was she just a wrestler? I mean, a manager.
I think Medusa wrestled some Japanese girls in WCW, but I don't know if there was an actual division or if it was just like the Saturday.
Right.
I actually do not know, because I was not a wrestling fan before I was a wrestler, and so I'm not 100% sure what all happened before I got to WCW. But when I started in WCW and Macho Man left, Jimmy Hart and Terry Taylor were kind of booking the Saturday program, and so I got to take a few of my friends that I wrestled with on the indies and bring them on to the Saturday TV tapings at Orlando. They were, Universal Studios had like a studio set, I guess, where we would have the ring, and then people who paid to get into Disney would come watch the shows. And so I did some it wasn't like women's wrestling division, but I did get to have women's singles matches in WCW, but Medusa was not there at that time.
Gotcha. And you would wrestle in a blue dress and barefoot. Was that tough at all?
No. So the way that I saw it is, in gymnastics, you're barefoot. Like, some gymnasts wear like shoes, but on my team, pretty much everybody was barefoot when they would do their floor routine or beam routine or vaulting or whatever. And I kind of saw pro wrestling like a gymnastics floor routine, except that instead of landing on your feet, you're landing on your back. And so to me, it was just like gymnastics. So to be barefoot was no big deal. And then as far as the blue dress, I just had it be kind of leotard material. And then, so that's just kind of how I transferred it. I said, okay, I just need something stretchy that I can do these moves in. And, so I guess I kind of came up with it based on like a gymnastics floor routine type of idea.
Yeah. So, and during that time in WCW, wrestling was going crazy. I mean, it was, you had WWF versus WCW. It was at all time, super popular. But there was also a lot of management changes going on in WCW, and I don't think anyone would have predicted in '98 or that it would be out of business in 2 years.
Right.
What were you? Could you feel it? Like, you're coming in, you're new. Could you feel the chaos, or did you think that's just how the wrestling business was?
Well, I was really protected being under Macho Man's wing. Like, I was not a part of any type of politics or drama or stress of any kind. It was like Macho Man, we'd show up like right before the show, and he would give us our own dressing room, and then he would tell us what we're doing on the show, and then we would leave. So whatever kind of stuff was happening politically or within the management, I felt like I had nothing to do with it. I was just enjoying being on TV on Monday nights. And then when Macho Man left, it became more apparent because I was no longer under his protection. And so I got bounced around a little bit with going to the power plant and then being around a lot of disgruntled employees. But even though everybody was disgruntled, I thought, man, I just came from a world where I made $4.25 an hour. Like, I'm not going to complain about whatever is happening because this is way better than what I was doing before. So I don't know. I would say it didn't really affect me too negatively. I had no idea that the company was going to fold, but thankfully I got picked up by the WWE, or it was WWF then, before the company folded. So I already felt pretty secure in my career moving over to work for Vince McMahon.
Right. And how did they contact you?
The WWE?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't contact me. I guess I contacted them. I got J.J. Dillon called me and said that they were not going to issue the second year of my contract at WCW, and so I called Dean Malenko, who is like a mentor and friend of mine, and said, hey, I'm getting released from WCW. How do I get in with WWF? And he said, well, come to the show, and I'll get you backstage, and you can meet with Jim Ross. And so the show was actually in Atlanta, and WCW had already purchased me a plane ticket to Atlanta because I was at the power plant on and off. And so I just used the plane ticket that Ted Turner bought me to go backstage to the WWF. And Dean Malenko brought me backstage, and I met with Jim Ross. And Dean had given Jim the heads up, like, hey, Nora is leaving WCW. You want to, I don't know, see if you want to hire her. And so then Jim Ross had a little meeting with me. And in the meeting, he was like, yeah, we start most of our girls out as one of the Godfather's ladies. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah. Like, I didn't want to say, oh, God, please, no, don't make me do that. Right. But he was like, yeah, you know, and he's like listing all the girls who had went on to be famous from that position, you know, and I just smiled and nodded. And he said, so we'd like to offer you a developmental contract. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. So I flew home and started making money right away before they even gave me a character or knew what to do with me. So I was still getting severance from WCW, and I was getting developmental guarantee from WWF and not really on TV. So that was like the highlight of my career, was sitting home and getting paid by 2 companies.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was just like, man, this life could not get any better. This is amazing. But then eventually they did send me to go to Memphis, Tennessee, and train with like Ronnie Killings and Brian Kendrick and Brian Danielson and the Mean Street Posse and Jason Sensation. There was like a huge group of us that all kind of trained at the WWF. Oh, and Victoria, Miss Kitty, all trained at the developmental training camp there. Charlie Haas, yeah, there was a whole crew of us that trained there while we were waiting to find out what the WWF was going to do with us.
Yeah. Now, during your time with WWF, what would you say were some of your favorite moments?
I don't know. Like, a lot of my favorite moments didn't have anything to do with being on TV. I mean, I got paid to travel the world, you know. I mean, 49 states, 15 different countries. There's, like, so many awesome things that I thought, wow, like, people save their whole lives to go on vacation to, like, Brisbane, Australia, and I'm getting paid to be here, or Seoul, Korea, or Helsinki, Finland, or, you know, wherever these really cool places are. And I always, and I mean, you could tell by looking at me, but I was the one who would skip the gym to go see the sights, you know, and so that really, just being able to travel the world. But as far as like my television career, I really enjoyed my TV storyline with Spike Dudley. It was kind of fun to have like actual acting skits and things that the fans could get involved with or get behind or be involved and happy about. And so I would say that my Disney romance with Spike Dudley was definitely one of my favorite times on my TV career.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, it is crazy how many wrestlers I talk to who talk about all these countries they've been to but never got to see anything, or, you know, they get to see it from the bus. And yeah, that's great that you were able to take advantage of that, because you know, it is hard to travel.
Yes.
Travel the world.
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, really everyone did like the tanning in the gym. And I was like, oh, I should go tanning in the gym. But it's like, man, you know, like, I may never, ever be in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia ever again. Like, I need to go see the tallest buildings. Like, you know, so yeah. So my, like, career may have suffered for my choices. You know, instead of being on the cover of the magazine, I was, like, on page 18. But to me, it was all worth it. Like, I really wanted to take every opportunity possible to experience life to the fullest. And even if that meant being a supporting actress instead of the lead actress.
So, had you been contacted about Raw 25 either? Or, because you were at Raw 15.
No, I didn't remember being at Raw 15.
Oh.
But I also had somebody ask me if I was going to be at Raw 25, and to be honest, I didn't even know that there was a 25th anniversary. I'm like so not in touch with the TV show. Like sometimes Sean Devari will find something that he thinks is like super cool that happened in wrestling, and then he'll send me the highlight, like, and he'll say, "Ooh, watch this," or "Have you seen this kid yet?" Or "Have you seen?" You know, so like every now and then Sean Devari will give me the highlights, but I haven't actually like watched Raw or SmackDown or whatever in years. So I feel out of the loop, and it stinks because like when I go to do autograph signings and stuff, fans will want to talk wrestling. Like they want to say like, who's your favorites? Who are you watching? Who is, like they want to talk about what they're passionate about. And I'm just like contribute to conversation. I feel like a jerk, but it's just like my lifestyle just doesn't involve watching TV. And so I'm just kind of out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like most of the former wrestlers I talk to don't really keep up with the product right now. And I'm not sure if it's because the shows are so long now and there's so much of it, or just being in the business for so long that you lose interest. But it didn't seem to happen as much before. Like, 80s wrestlers were still following it in the 90s, that retired earlier, whereas now it definitely seems like more of a gap.
Well, I think it depends on how much of a fan you were before you even did it. Like I said, I didn't really watch wrestling, and then all of a sudden I was on TV, and it was like my life for 6 years, but then I didn't really watch it anymore. And then also just like TV in general. So the Vikings were doing really well this year, and I'm from Minnesota, and everybody was talking about the Vikings, and I just couldn't bring myself to sit in front of a TV for 4 hours and watch a game. Like I just can't. That's just not how I roll. I just don't watch TV. And so if something cool happens, send me a highlight. That's about it. So part of it is that I'm just not like a fan of wrestling enough to watch it, and the other thing is that I just don't want to sit down for 3 hours. I don't like sitting down for 3 hours. It's not what I do. So yeah, that's just, I guess, where I'm at now.
So you never binge watch like Game of Thrones or Stranger Things or anything like that?
No. I know. I see all these T-shirts that say Stranger Things, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And my husband likes what's that? Last couple of years, The Walking Dead. And he had me watch. I got through like half of one episode, and I was like, ugh. I cannot watch this. And he's like, yeah, but it's like all these moral dilemmas, and it's like about, the good versus evil, and like, what would you do in these high stress environments? And I'm like, I don't know. My life can be stressful enough. I do not need like manufactured stress through a television program. No, thank you.
Yeah, my wife was the same way. She doesn't. She did get into Stranger Things, but she doesn't get into most shows I watch. But that and Breaking Bad were like the two that she managed to sit through and enjoy.
Yeah.
But so once you got out of the wrestling business, I know you've done a lot of you did a lot of work for. A lot of charity work, helping people with drug and alcohol rehab. Are you still involved with doing that?
Yeah. So as far as wrestling, I feel like prepared me for anything I could ever want to do. I mean, it's like it's a really tough mental game to be in show business. And so I feel like it prepared me really for anything I want to do. I feel like if I can handle the stress of being on live television, I can pretty much handle the stress of anything that I want to. And so I have had a few really cool opportunities to be an advocate for people coming out of incarceration, people with chemical dependency problems, whether it's speaking with...
Hello?
Just...
sorry,
can you still hear me?
Yeah, I lost you there for 1 second. But...
Oh, okay. So yeah, my television career prepared me for just having a voice, I guess, and the confidence to be able to be an advocate for people with chemical dependency issues, also people coming out of incarceration who are trying to start their lives anew, and so I've been able to speak to politicians in Minnesota, and then also just like different fundraisers, been able to share. Stories of hope and facilitate conversations of people that have had overcome really tough difficulties. And so I volunteered at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge in downtown Minneapolis for 10 years, and now I'm involved in a few other ministries that help people get on their feet when they're deciding to change their life for the better.
That's great. And you're also... a wrestling trainer, working with Sean Davari and Ken Anderson with the Academy.
Ken Anderson.
Yeah, School of Pro Wrestling in Minneapolis. How did that all get started?
Well, Sean Davari told me that him and Ken were going into business together and starting a pro wrestling school, and he asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And even though I'm not like super into pro wrestling anymore, Sean's one of my best friends, and I would really do anything for him. I really care for him as a person. And I like Ken too. I just happen to be closer friends with Sean, because when Sean started in the WWE, he was not old enough to rent a car. He was like 18. And so he used to ride with me. And so we became like wrestling friends or whatever. And we kind of developed that battle buddy bond, back when he first started on TV. And so I said, yeah, I'll be a part of your school. And so I'm one of the trainers there. Ken does most of the hands-on training. Ken does an awesome job. I mean, he really is thorough, and he cares about things done correctly so that people don't get hurt. And then I've done some, like, I would say I'm like a guest trainer there. I'm not there every day, because I do have another full-time job and other volunteer work that I do, so I'm not there every day like Ken is and Sean is. But when I am there, it is really fun to see the students progressing, to get to see how excited they are, and really when you see people first come in, they share on their first day of class like what inspired them to want to be a wrestler, or like why are they there at the school, and then to actually see them work their way up to working independent shows around Minneapolis and really hone their skills, hands-on, doing stuff in front of live audiences. It's fun to watch that transformation.
Yeah, and I know you say you don't really watch wrestling too much now, but have you been paying attention to how much women's wrestling has changed in WWE as far as, kind of getting away more from the TNA aspect and kind of moving more to, longer matches and more athleticism? Have you been able to follow that much?
Well, I was at WrestleMania, was it last year? Which year was it where there's three girls? It was Charlotte and Sasha, and then was it Becky Lynch?
Yeah, that was not this past year, not last year, but the year before, right?
Okay, so I was at that WrestleMania, and I watched the girls' match, and I was so impressed. I mean, their athleticism, their costumes, everything was just fantastic. And so I was really happy to see that the girls today, and I do watch some highlights here and there of different wrestlers, and they all seemed like they have really dedicated tons of time to being just as good as the guys. I mean, really learning all the moves, learning how to have that in-ring persona, all of that stuff. And so I've been really happy that the girls' trend right now just happens to be that not only do they all look athletic and strong, but that they take their job really seriously.
Yeah. Is there anyone, I know you don't watch that much, but has there anyone that really caught your attention that you were a fan of or that you were really impressed by?
Well, Charlotte really blew my mind when I saw her do some gymnastics type things that usually are done by girls who are 5'1" and 80 pounds. I mean, the fact that Charlotte can do these huge moves and she is big, that blows my mind. I remember the first time I saw Brock Lesnar do some top rope thing, I was like, what? But he's huge. And so that's how I feel with Charlotte. It's like, wow, she is doing things that gravity is screaming, don't do that. And she's like, F you, gravity. She, so I would say that she has really blown my mind, and I'd say she's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. I know you don't really watch football, but do you have any opinions on the XFL probably coming back? Because you were there when it started the first time, right?
I was there, and it was so sad that the first game wasn't a good game. I feel like if that first game would have been competitive, that people would have gotten into it, but I think it was a blowout, and then people were like, oh, well, nobody likes a blowout no matter what kind of football it is. And so that's what stunk about it. But I really thought Vince McMahon was so bold and brave in trying something so new, and if it made a comeback, I would be in full support of it. I still think it's a cool idea. Story
in a book called More Than a Conqueror by Portia Baxter. Is that correct?
Yes. My friend Portia overcame addiction, and she has a really inspirational story that she shared in a book. And then at the end of her book, she has a collection of stories from people that she knows that have overcome other challenges in life other than drug addiction to kind of help inspire her readers who might be faced with a variety of challenges. And my personal story is in there. And so if anyone wanted to read more about a personal challenge that I went through that had nothing to do with pro wrestling, they could go on Amazon and order the book More Than a Conqueror by Portia Baxter, Porcia Baxter, and they can just read a little bit about what happened in my life after pro wrestling.
Great. And I also wanted to ask you, what is your favorite match that you were involved with of all time? WrestleMania 20, getting my head shaved, definitely got me like the most, I don't know if you call it notoriety or was memorable for a lot of fans. However, whenever someone just finds out, like, oh, you used to be a wrestler, how can I watch you? And I tell them to watch like a YouTube video. The one I always tell them to watch is Survivor Series 2003 against Lita, because Lita was a super popular character, and the fans were really into the match, and it was a good match. Like it was good. And so I like Survivor Series from 2003, Molly versus Lita. There's also a couple of matches against Trish that I thought went really well. But definitely my most like famous match would be WrestleMania 20 at Madison Square Garden. Absolutely. You also teamed up a lot with Gail Kim, who she recently retired. She retired last year. Do you still keep in touch with her? I do. Yeah, we live in different parts of the country, so we don't like hang out in person. But her birthday's in February, and I always, text her and see what's going on her birthday. And then I would say we like message each other, I don't know, every couple of months or so, and just check in and see what each other's up to. And I keep wanting to like run into her at an autograph signing, and I haven't this year, but I'm hoping to soon. And then if her husband does any things in the Minneapolis area, I always call her and I'm like, are you coming to Minneapolis? And she doesn't always go with him or anything, but yeah, I would still consider Gail a friend. I really like her a lot. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.